the stars flickered like distant sentinels across the vast emptiness of space. Within this cosmic theater, countless species had risen, flourished, and sometimes fallen. The Galactic Coalition, a union of the most advanced civilizations, maintained a delicate balance of power, a balance now threatened by the encroaching darkness known as the Void Dominion. Captain Kira Nash stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild Earth's flagship vessel. The reinforced viewports revealed the blue-green jewel of humanity's homeworld growing smaller as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. At 42, Nash had the weathered look of someone who had seen too much combat, but still maintained that spark in her eyes, a mix of determination and something the aliens called the human madness. Final systems check complete, Captain, reported her first officer, Lieutenant Rivera. All personnel secure for hyperspace transition. Nash nodded, her short auburn hair barely moving with the gesture. Execute jump sequence. The ship hummed with energy as the hyperdrive engines engaged. Years ago, humans had been deemed too dangerous for interstellar travel, labeled as Deathworlders by the Galactic Coalition. Earth, with its high-gravity extreme weather patterns and predatory ecosystem, had produced a species considered too volatile, too resilient, and far too resourceful to be trusted in the greater cosmos. The Isolation Treaty had been signed nearly 30 years prior. Humanity could develop on their own, but contact with other species was strictly regulated. Humans who left Earth needed special permissions, underwent extensive psychological evaluations, and were always watched. Nash had been one of the first to break that barrier, earning her place as a military liaison through sheer force of will and an uncanny ability to make the impossible seem merely improbable. Now she commanded a fleet that had never been meant to exist. The reason for this unprecedented expedition lay in a desperate transmission received 3 Earth weeks ago. Ambassador Reed, a tall, willowy alien with luminescent skin, had arrived with an urgent request that bypassed all normal diplomatic channels. Nash remembered the meeting in the United Earth Government's High Council chamber. Reed had stood before them, his skin pulsing with anxiety, a biological response his species couldn't control. The luminary homeworld has fallen under attack. Reed had announced, his melodic voice strained. The Void Dominion has broken through our outer defenses. Our people, artists, philosophers, healers, cannot withstand such aggression. We have sent distress signals to all coalition members, but... Reed's voice had cracked, then his desperation palpable. The nearest coalition fleets are months away. By then, it will be too late. There is only one civilization close enough, powerful enough, to intervene. His large faceted eyes had fixed on the human representatives. You, the Deathworlders. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in that chamber. The very qualities that had led to humanity's isolation, their capacity for violence, their adaptability to combat, their relentless determination, were now being sought as salvation. After heated debate, the decision had been made. Earth would respond to the call for help, but with conditions. This would be a humanitarian mission, not a gateway to military expansion. And Captain Nash, with her diplomatic experience and combat record, would lead it. Now, as the Thunderchild led a fleet of 20 warships through hyperspace, Nash felt the weight of those conditions. She wasn't just representing humanity's military might. She was representing its character. The transition from hyperspace ended with a flash of blue light as the fleet emerged near the edge of the Sci-Fi system. Nash immediately noted the strategic positioning of her ships, a diamond formation with heavy cruisers on the perimeter and smaller, faster vessels inside the protective envelope. "Sensors give me a full spectrum analysis," Nash ordered. "Multiple contacts detected, Captain," the sensor officer reported. "Void Dominion signatures confirmed. I'm counting at least 30 vessels of various classes. They're in orbit around Luminary Prime." Lieutenant Rivera moved to Nash's side. "Their pattern suggests a blockade formation. They're preventing anyone from leaving the planet." Nash's expression hardened. "And likely preventing anyone from arriving to help as well. Tactical, show me the flagship." The main view screen shifted to display an enormous vessel easily 3 times the size of the Thunderchild. Its dark hull absorbed light, rather than reflecting it, creating an ominous silhouette against the backdrop of space. "The dreadnought Oblivion," Nash murmured. "Warlord Krev's personal warship." Ambassador Reed, who had insisted on accompanying the mission, stepped forward. His translucent skin had taken on a pale blue tint fear Nash had learned among his kind. "That ship has destroyed entire worlds," Reed said quietly. "The Void Dominion doesn't merely conquer, they consume. Every planet they take becomes part of their war machine. They strip it of resources, convert the population into slave labor or conscripts, and move on to the next target." "Not this time," Nash said firmly. She turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships in our fleet." When the connection was established, Nash spoke clearly and confidently, her words transmitted across all 20 vessels. "This is Captain Nash. We've arrived at Xiphos to find exactly what we expected. The Void Dominion has established a blockade around Luminary Prime. Our mission is clear break. That blockade drive the Dominion from this system and protect the Luminary people. The enemy outnumbers us, but numbers aren't everything." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "We are Deathworlders. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day, and instead of dying, we thrived. The Dominion has never faced humans in combat. They don't know what we're capable of. Today they will learn." Nash nodded to her communications officer to end the transmission, then turned to her tactical station. "Deploy stealth scouts. I want detailed scans of their fleet composition, defensive systems, and communication patterns. We're not engaging until we understand exactly what we're up against." Over the next 12 hours, the human fleet maintained position at the edge of the system, gathering intelligence while staying beyond the Dominion's sensor range. Nash used this time to refine her strategy, consulting with her senior officers and with General Diana Wells, who commanded the Marine contingent aboard the fleet. General Wells was a formidable presence, tall with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. She had a reputation for unconventional tactics that had earned her both commendations and reprimands throughout her career. "Their ships are heavily armored," Wells noted, examining the scout reports. "But their point defense systems have gaps. And look at these energy readings. They're diverting power from their engines to maintain the blockade formation." Nash nodded. "They're not expecting an attack. They think they've already won." "That's our advantage," Wells replied with a predatory smile. "Underestimation is the first step to defeat." Ambassador Reed watched this exchange with growing alarm. "Captain General," he interjected, "the Dominion fleet outguns us significantly. Even with tactical advantages, a direct confrontation would be—" "Who said anything about direct?" Nash interrupted. "Humans don't fight fair, Ambassador. We fight to win." The plan that emerged was audacious. Rather than engaging the Dominion fleet as a unified force, the human ships would split into smaller, more maneuverable units. Some would create diversions, others would target specific vulnerabilities, and a third group, led by the Thunderchild, would attempt to break through to the planet's surface. "It's chaos," Reed said, shaking his head. "Coordinated chaos, perhaps, but still chaos." Nash smiled grimly. "Exactly. The Dominion expects order and hierarchy. We'll give them neither." As final preparations were made, Nash retreated to her quarters for a brief moment of solitude. She activated her personal communication device and recorded a message to be sent back to Earth regardless of the outcome. "High Council, this is Captain Nash. By the time you receive this, we will have engaged the Void Dominion over Luminary Prime. Our mission is proceeding according to plan, though we've confirmed the enemy force is larger than initially estimated." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Whatever happens here today, I want to emphasize that this mission represents more than a military operation. It's an opportunity to redefine humanity's place in the galaxy. For too long, we've been feared for what we might do. After today, perhaps we'll be respected for what we choose to do." Nash ended the recording, and returned to the bridge where her crew awaited her final orders. "All ships report ready," Captain Lieutenant Rivera confirmed. Nash took her command chair, her posture straight, her expression resolute. "Begin the operation." The human fleet burst into action with a synchronicity that belied their chaotic strategy. 5 cruisers accelerated toward the Dominion's left flank, weapons charging. Another 7 vessels moved to engage the right flank. The remaining ships, including the Thunderchild, activated enhanced stealth systems and began a careful approach through the resulting gap. The Dominion responded exactly as Nash had predicted, with rigid textbook precision. Their ships broke formation to counter the perceived main thrust of the human attack, leaving the center of their blockade thinned. "They're taking the bait," Rivera reported, watching the tactical display. Nash nodded. "Maintain course. Weapons on standby, but do not engage unless directly threatened. Our primary objective is to reach the surface." The Thunderchild and its escort vessels slipped through the disarray of the Dominion fleet like ghosts. When one Dominion cruiser did detect them and moved to intercept, it was quickly disabled by precision strikes from the human escorts. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the surface. The Luminary Resistance fighters are sending coordinates for a safe landing zone." "Relay those to the transport ships," Nash ordered. "General Wells, prepare your Marines for ground deployment." General Wells, who had joined Nash on the bridge, acknowledged the order with a sharp nod. "My teams are already in the dropships. We're ready on your command." As the Thunderchild entered Luminary Prime's atmosphere, the true extent of the Void Dominion's occupation became clear. The once beautiful capital city of the Luminary, known for its crystalline spires and floating gardens, now lay partially in ruins. Dark structures of Dominion design had been erected among the devastation command centers, weapons platforms, and processing facilities. Nash felt a surge of anger at the sight. The Luminary were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful creators, artists, musicians, and philosophers who had never developed weapons of war. This was not conquest. It was cultural genocide. "Take us down," she ordered, her voice tight with controlled fury. The Thunderchild descended through wisps of cloud, its hull gleaming in the light of Xiphus's sun. Below Dominion, ground forces could be seen rushing to defensive positions around their primary command structure, a massive obsidian pyramid that pulsed with dark energy. "General Wells, you have operational control of the ground assault," Nash said. "Captain Stone will coordinate air support from the escort vessels." Wells gave a crisp salute. "Understood, Captain. We'll have that command center secured within the hour." As the Marine dropships detached from the Thunderchild and streaked toward the surface, Nash returned her attention to the space battle raging above them. The human diversionary force had executed their role perfectly, drawing most of the Dominion fleet away from the planet. But now, as the Dominion commanders realized they'd been outmaneuvered, they were responding with overwhelming force. "Multiple Dominion ships breaking orbit," the sensor officer reported. "They're moving to cut off our extraction route." Nash studied the tactical display. The Dominion dreadnought Oblivion had remained in high orbit, coordinating the overall Dominion response. If they could disrupt that command structure— "Lieutenant Rivera, you have the bridge," Nash declared. "I'm taking command of our orbital operations personally." She moved to the tactical station and opened a channel to all human vessels still in space. "This is Captain Nash. We're changing the game plan. All ships form up on these coordinates." She quickly input a series of numbers. "We're going after the Oblivion." Even Rivera looked startled. "Captain, the Oblivion is heavily defended. Its shield systems alone are vulnerable during weapons discharge." Nash finished for him. "Our scouts confirmed it. There's a 3-second window where they have to cycle down sections of their shields to fire their main cannons. We're going to exploit that." The human fleet, despite having been scattered across the system by the initial stages of the battle, began to coalesce into a new formation. Nash directed them with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction, each ship playing its part in a deadly symphony. Meanwhile, on the surface of Luminary Prime, General Wells led her Marines through the shattered remains of what had once been a cultural center. The Dominion troops they encountered fought with mechanical efficiency, but lacked the adaptability to counter the humans' guerrilla tactics. Major Tom Wilson, commanding the ground forces forward element, reported steady progress toward the command pyramid. "We've secured the main approach, General," Wilson's voice came through Wells's comm unit. "But there's something strange here. The Dominion troops are changing tactics. They're adapting to our movements." Wells frowned. "That's unexpected. The intelligence briefings suggested rigid adherence to doctrine." "Someone's directing them," Wilson replied. "Someone smart. We've intercepted communications indicating Warlord Krev himself might be planetside." This changed the equation significantly. If Krev was indeed within the pyramid, rather than aboard the Oblivion capturing him, could end the conflict immediately. "Hold position, Major," Wells ordered. "I'm joining your team. We're going after Krev." In orbit, the human fleet executed Nash's daring plan. 3 corvettes made strafing runs past the Oblivion, forcing it to activate its main weapon systems. The moment the energy signatures indicated a firing sequence, the rest of the fleet concentrated their firepower on the precise shield section that would momentarily weaken. The result was spectacular. A cascade of explosions rippled across the dreadnought's hull as multiple shots penetrated its defenses. Systems began to fail across the massive vessel, causing it to list to one side. "Direct hit to their main power core," Nash's tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement. "Their shields are collapsing weapon systems offline." Nash allowed herself a brief smile. "Open a channel to the Oblivion." When the connection was established, she spoke clearly and forcefully. "Attention, Void Dominion vessel. This is Captain Kira Nash of the Earth Fleet. Your shields are down, your weapons disabled. Surrender now, or we will be forced to destroy your ship." There was a long pause before a response came, not from the Oblivion, but from the surface. "Captain Nash." The voice was deep resonant and chillingly calm. "I am Warlord Krev. Your reputation, it seems, is well deserved. But you have miscalculated. The Oblivion is merely a vessel. I am the Dominion." Nash exchanged a glance with Rivera. "Transmit this feed to General Wells," she ordered quietly before addressing Krev again. "If you're on the surface, Warlord, then you should know we have troops advancing on your position as we speak. Your forces in orbit are defeated. Surrender, and we can avoid further bloodshed." Krev's laughter rumbled through the communication system. "Bloodshed does not concern me, Captain. It is merely the currency with which new orders are purchased. Besides, you are too late. The assimilations of this world is nearly complete." On the surface, Wells received Nash's transmission and immediately adjusted her approach. If Krev was inside the pyramid, they needed to reach him before he could escape or trigger any contingency plans. The Marine assault teams converged on the pyramid from multiple directions, encountering increasingly desperate resistance from the Dominion troops. It was clear now that these weren't just standard soldiers, they were Krev's personal guard, enhanced with cybernetic implants and advanced armor. Wells, alongside Major Wilson, led a small strike team through a breach in the pyramid's eastern face. The interior was a maze of dark corridors illuminated by pulsing red light. Energy readings indicated a massive power source at the center of the structure. "That's where we'll find him," Wells muttered, checking her weapon. "Wilson, take point. Everyone else watch for traps." As they advanced deeper into the pyramid, they began to encounter luminary captives. The native species, their luminescent skin dimmed by suffering, connected to strange machines that seemed to be draining their life energy. "This is worse than we thought," Wilson said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "They're not just conquering the planet. They're harvesting the inhabitants." Wells ordered medical teams to assist the captives while the main assault force continued toward the central chamber. When they finally breached the massive doors guarding Krev's command center, they were met with an unexpected sight. Warlord Krev was not the monstrous figure they had anticipated. He appeared almost human, save for his ashen skin and eyes that glowed with an internal red light. He stood calmly in the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the battle in orbit. "General Wells," he said, turning to face them, "and the famous Major Wilson, I've studied your tactics extensively. Fascinating how you Deathworlders approach warfare so chaotic, so inefficient, yet somehow effective." Wells raised her weapon. "Warlord Krev, in the name of the United Earth Government and the Galactic Coalition, I place you under arrest for war crimes against the Luminary people." Krev smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp to be natural. "War crimes? Is it a crime to shepherd lesser species toward their destiny? The Luminaries serve a greater purpose now than they ever could have achieved on their own. That's not for you to decide." Wilson growled his rifle, aimed steadily at Krev's head. "Isn't it?" Krev countered. "The strong have always decided the fate of the weak. It is the way of the universe. Your own planet's history proves this." "Our history also shows we can learn from our mistakes," Wells replied. "Now, are you surrendering, or do we do this the hard way?" In orbit, Nash watched the standoff through the video feed from Wells's helmet camera. The battle around the Oblivion had largely ended with their command ship crippled and their leader cornered. Most of the Dominion vessels had either surrendered or attempted to flee, only to be captured by the human fleet. Captain Rivera said urgently, "We're detecting an energy surge from the pyramid. It's some kind of self-destruct sequence." Nash's expression hardened. "General Wells, you need to evacuate immediately. The pyramid is rigged to explode." On the surface, Wells received Nash's warning but stood her ground. "Krev, disable the self-destruct sequence. Now." The warlord's smile widened. "And why would I do that? Death is merely transformation, General. The Void Dominion will continue with or without me." Wells glanced at Wilson, a silent communication passing between them. In a coordinated movement, Wilson fired a shot that struck Krev's shoulder, not a killing blow, but enough to stagger him, while Wells lunged forward, tackling the warlord to the ground. "Major, find that detonator," Wells shouted, struggling to restrain Krev, who proved unnaturally strong despite his wound. Wilson and his team raced to the central console, where holographic controls glowed with ominous red light. After several tense moments, Wilson called out, "Got it. Deactivation sequence requires a genetic key. It's keyed to his DNA." Number Samamid. With a surge of strength, Wells dragged the struggling warlord toward the console. "Use his hand," she ordered. Despite Krev's resistance, they managed to press his palm against the scanner. The red lights throughout the pyramid faded to a neutral blue, indicating the self-destruct sequence had been aborted. "Self-destruct sequence neutralized," Wilson confirmed, relief evident in his voice. Wells secured restraints around Krev's wrists. "Warlord Krev, you are hereby taken into custody to answer for your crimes against the Luminary people and the Galactic Coalition." Krev, despite his defeat, maintained his eerie calm. "You've won a battle, Deathworlders, not the war. The Void will consume all eventually." In orbit, Nash received confirmation that Krev had been captured and the immediate threat neutralized. She allowed herself a moment to survey the aftermath of the battle. The space around Luminary Prime was littered with debris from destroyed ships, mostly Dominion vessels, though the human fleet had not emerged unscathed. "Casualty reports," Nash requested quietly. Lieutenant Rivera's expression was solemn as he delivered the news. 3 of our ships destroyed, Captain. 7 others damaged to varying degrees. Early estimates suggest we lost approximately 200 personnel." Nash closed her eyes briefly, acknowledging the sacrifice. "And the Luminary?" "Reports from the surface indicate thousands of casualties from the initial Dominion invasion," Rivera replied, "but millions more saved by our intervention." Ambassador Reed, who had remained on the bridge throughout the battle, approached Nash. His skin now pulsed with a warm golden light, a sign of deep emotion among his people. "Captain," he said, his voice thick with feeling, I don't have words to express the gratitude of the luminary people. You and your fleet have done the impossible. You've saved not just lives, but an entire culture from extinction." Nash nodded solemnly. "That was our mission, Ambassador. But the work isn't finished. There will be wounded to treat, infrastructure to rebuild, and diplomatic consequences to manage," Reed added. "Your government's decision to break the isolation treaty, even for such a noble cause, will have repercussions throughout the coalition." Nash turned to face the view screen, where the beautiful but scarred face of Luminary Prime filled the display. "Perhaps it's time for the treaty to be reconsidered anyway. Humanity has proven we can be more than the dangerous Deathworlders everyone fears. Today we were protectors." "Indeed," Reed agreed. "And I believe many in the coalition will now see that the very traits that make humans formidable opponents also make you invaluable allies." In the days that followed, the human fleet remained in the SOS system, assisting with recovery efforts and establishing a defensive perimeter against any potential Dominion counterattack. Word of their victory spread rapidly through coalition space, causing varied reactions, from celebration to concern about the implications of humanity's successful military intervention. Warlord Krev was transported to Earth for temporary detainment, pending a formal trial before a coalition tribunal. His capture had dealt a significant blow to the Void Dominion, though intelligence reports suggested it was just one faction of a larger entity that remained shrouded in mystery. 2 weeks after the battle, Captain Nash stood on a balcony overlooking the partially rebuilt Luminary capital. The crystalline spires were beginning to shine again in the sunset, their light mingling with the natural luminescence of the Luminary people moving through the streets below. General Wells joined her, still wearing her combat uniform, though the fighting had long since ended. "Reconstruction is proceeding ahead of schedule," Wells reported. "The Luminary are remarkably resilient for a supposedly fragile species." Nash nodded. "Maybe we've all been underestimating each other." "Speaking of which," Wells said, handing Nash a data tablet, "I've received new orders from Earth. The High Council has authorized continued human presence in this system at the Luminary government's request. They want us to establish a permanent defense outpost here." Nash took the tablet, scanning its contents with growing interest. "This goes beyond a simple military arrangement. They're proposing a full diplomatic relationship, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, the works. First step toward ending the isolation," Wells suggested. "Maybe," Nash admitted, "though not everyone in the coalition will be thrilled about it." Wells leaned against the balcony railing. "Can't please everyone. But we've earned this much, I think. The right to be judged by our actions, not our potential for violence." Nash was silent for a moment, watching as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky above Luminary Prime. "You know," she said finally, "when we received that SOS signal, I never imagined it would lead to this. I thought we'd fight a battle, save some lives if we could, and return to our isolation. But now everything's changing." Wells finished for her. Nash nodded. "Humanity's stepping onto the galactic stage for better or worse. And the rest of the universe is going to have to accept that we're more than just the dangerous species from a death world. We're the dangerous species that will cross the void to answer a call for help," Wells said with a small smile. From the streets below, music began to rise, the distinctive ethereal harmonies of Luminary celebration songs. The locals were holding some kind of Thanksgiving ceremony, their bodies glowing with joy and relief. Ambassador Reed approached the 2 human officers, accompanied by several Luminary dignitaries whose skin shimmered with formal patterns of respect and gratitude. "Captain Nash, General Wells," Reed said, "the Luminary High Council wishes to express their eternal gratitude. They have composed a song of remembrance that will preserve the story of Earth's intervention for generations to come." One of the luminaries stepped forward, speaking in carefully practiced English. "Your people came from across the stars when all seemed lost. You brought chaos to our enemies and hope to our hearts. The Deathworlders are now and forever the Luminaries' most honored allies." Nash bowed her head in acknowledgement. "We're grateful for your trust and we promise it won't be misplaced. As the celebration continued into the night, Nash found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here from isolation to intervention to alliance. The galaxy was a vast and often dangerous place, filled with both threats and opportunities. But perhaps what it needed most was precisely what Earth had to offer: the determination to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The stars above Luminary Prime seemed brighter, somehow as if reflecting the new possibilities that had opened up. Humanity had sent its fleet into the void in answer to a desperate call, and in doing so had changed not just the fate of one world, but potentially the course of galactic history. When Nash finally retired to her quarters aboard the Thunderchild that night, she recorded one final message to the Earth High Council. Mission accomplished. The Luminary are safe. Warlord Krev is in custody, and the Void Dominion has been driven from the Xiphos system. But more importantly, we've begun something new here, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than fear. The dangerous Deathworlders have proven we can be the most reliable allies in the darkest hours. I believe this is just the beginning of a new chapter for humanity among the stars. As Nash ended the recording, she looked out her viewport at the distant blue-white sparkle of Earth barely visible from this far away. They would return home soon, bringing with them not just a military victory, but a fundamental shift in humanity's place in the cosmos. The isolation was over. The Deathworlders had answered the call.